Okay, the work as it stands, it has two elements, two parts to it. One is a design on the tarmac of the schoolyard, which consists of a series of variously coloured arcs and circles, which are painted onto the surface, permanently installed onto the surface of the yard. And the other half of the project, or the other element of the project, is a series of photographs that have been made during the playtime and break time of the school day from an elevated position, basically, and you see the children in the yard with the graphic, with the lines. After sort of doing some research out there and trying to do things during the school time where you would, you know, go from class to class, and what's really interesting about a school is how scheduled the day is and how on top of time you have to be, because everything happens on this, you know, you've got 10 minutes for this, 10 minutes for that, and then there's break time, and there's just an amazing logistics of people and space and teachers and children all moving in really complex and fast ways. So, and the other thing was that their actual creative life is really full, you know, so I really found it difficult to know, like, how am I meant to intervene here? They just seem to have everything. I don't seem to be able to have, what could I add to this sort of full life that they seem to have? They kind of do everything, which was good because it meant that it really kind of uncoupled what I was doing from anything particularly educational. So then it was the sort of the 20-minute kind of explosion of energy and unstructured activity which happens at break time that then sort of, I said, well, maybe that's actually where I could do something. And it's so noisy and so full of movement and energy, and again, so I would just hang out and turn up. And I also then did a lot of research, interview research, like video interview research about different games and playing activities that went on, particularly ones that they would self-organize. And so I then decided I would somehow, I was then looking at like the idea of the blank yard as a piece of design, in that it's different from playgrounds in a park or maybe even schoolyards in Scandinavia where there's like swings and slides and stuff. It's kind of empty and it's used for everything, you know, and I was just curious as to why it was empty and why stuff wasn't on it and stuff like that. So then I devised this sort of design, the piece of design for the yard, which you can see in the images. Part of it, I was kind of interested in the idea of use value, of making something that wasn't going. One of the best things about kids is that they're not really interested until they're sort of somehow initiated into it by the adult world. They're not that interested in category issues. They're not interested in whether something is art or not. They're just interested in whether it's interesting or useful to them at that particular moment in time. So like a child always knows what to do with the Carl Andre, you know what I mean, instinctively, you know. So there was kind of an interest in that thing, and the way to do that was to somehow, you know, continue. They were already getting a new school in a new environment, you know, was to somehow continue on that register, on the register of sort of design and use value. I was quite determined to keep the piece related to the sort of interests of my practice. In that, and that would have been the cause of some of the delays that I would have had, is that I would have had to sort of go away and sort this out, rather than, you know, because in a way there can be a confusion of roles, maybe subconsciously or unconsciously, about that. You know, who's working for who? You know, are you employed? You know, are you working for the school? You know, like, are you kind of in their service in a way? And so there can be subtle aspects of degrees of how you, and it's down to the artist to sort of set the agenda and handle the situation and take responsibility for what they do. And I think that's, you know, something you just have to sort of figure out and learn how to do. I mean, one thing to say is this project went on for a long time, as I think I've explained. And so it can become a sort of a struggle, in that you think, you know, will it ever will it ever be resolved? Will it ever get done? Will I ever get it off my desk? Will it ever, will it be hanging over me, forever?
Yeah.
And it's your own, because your role, you have to invent everything for yourself. As the artist, you have to invent all the roles for yourself and take responsibility then for those roles.
Yeah.
So it is a little scary. I mean, on the one hand, I went out there. It was a very loose proposal to start with. So I was really a lot of trial and error, a lot of hanging out, a lot of like, I'm developing this film idea.
Yeah.
And then not only did I not develop the film idea, but not only was the film idea never, manifested, then the whole film thing was kind of ditched, in a way. So that was very scary, because a certain amount of money had been spent. It was, you're in, you're committed. There's no reversing back out. But you've less money than when you started with, and so it is scary. But I think what makes it doable is if there's a certain amount of trust in the relationships.
Yeah.
And it always comes down to people.
Yeah.
So you can have all the structures. So we had contracts and all this, and everybody had a contract, but really, and then we had to tear up the contracts, because the contract said it will be delivered by such and such a date. Obviously, that didn't happen. Well, I mean, do you know what I mean? They sort of stopped being relevant, and it stopped being. We took a long time specifying what the artwork would be in the first manifestation, and then it wasn't going to be that. So obviously, that wasn't applicable. So but you can write contracts all day, but I think what's important is a certain element of trust. And but I mean, I think that's where the trust was. That's when I was describing about the trust. It was actually from the project managers, from Rory's point of view, that was really important, because he would then often reassure everybody. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And it wasn't coming from me.
Yes.
And sometimes, when I would be struggling with it, I wouldn't be the best person to reassure anybody anyway.
Of course, because you had.
Because I was like kind of, I wasn't sure, But I think when you reach a certain stage in your practice, you have a certain confidence in your practice, so you can sort of say,
I've delivered before.
I can make stuff. I can deliver stuff. I can make something happen. It mightn't be what we said at first, but but I think it's important that if you kind of badger somebody into a corner, they'll never make good work. There's this whole thing about like getting the artist, and then once you've got the artist, then everybody can kind of go home. I mean, I would see before the selection of the artist, after the selection of the artist, it's just been the same stuff, the same run. And I think that I would suggest that you would need to have some sort of, I don't know how it affects things economically and in terms of the available budgets, but I think it's important to have a sort of a project manager or a curator. One, from the artist's point of view, well, an artist and curator that can work together, so that the artist's not on their own, so that there is some sort of like mediation. They can mediate between, when there's difficulties, they can explain and mediate. They can put pressure on the artist, and they can stand up for the artist. They know when to, they'll maybe be in a better position to know when they need to kick ass and know when they need to sort of stand back. From a commissioner's point of view, if you can in any way not be in a rush, it really helps.
Absolutely.
So even though they said it would be really nice to have this for the launch of our new school building, and it would have been, but it didn't happen. Or if you kind of start the process and say we want it, like 6 months should be enough, right? And bang bang. Now I think it's good to have general deadlines and general guidelines, but to have it sort of built in that you need to have a thing by such and such a date isn't really that useful, because the other thing is that once you have it, you realise that you have it for a long time.